I don't know how to start this thing. What am I doing?
Well, having a title would help.
Yeah. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the as of yet untitled thing where I talk to people. It probably wasn't abundantly clear from the last thing I recorded, but I'm your host. It's me. The guy whose voice sounds like this is your host. My name is Sean Mann, and I'm 22 years old.
I don't think you have to put your age.
No, it's like a middle school assignment. You have to include all of your personal information. My social security number is. Anyway, here we are once again talking about another thing that wasn't supposed to be video games, but it turns out it's going to be video games again, which is fine. I'm here today with my lovely, handsome, slightly racist older brother.
You're a prick.
Eric Mann.
Hello.
That's him. So
That's me.
What are we talking about today?
Oh, so I want you to picture something real quick.
Okay, I'm picturing.
I want you to picture a roller coaster.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you're riding a roller coaster, you don't really care if there's a story to it, right?
Sure.
Like, you're gonna have fun if you just see an old school wooden roller coaster, and you see the hills and wooden ones don't have loops, but whatever, loops and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You just look at that and go, that looks fun, I'm going to ride that. It doesn't need to look fancy, it just needs to look fun, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if they begin to add story elements to it, if they begin to add a theme, and we're not using the middle school definition of theme right now, where it means the moral or message of the story, but we're talking about just like imagery and different look and a vibe.
Mm-hmm.
You would just go that's just it's the whipped cream and the cherry, right? Like, it's just additional fun stuff.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I think that I would be pretty devastated if the Hulk didn't have a cool story about the Hulk being radiated. I think that really makes the ride.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you got shot into the air suddenly, you'd just be like, but why did that happen?
That's kind of sudden.
Why did that? I don't get it.
Would have been cool if they'd taken time to establish that. Jeez.
I mean,
but yes, I
fucking up my analogy.
I'm sorry.
Stop fucking up my analogy.
I'm sorry. Please continue.
So, the thing about rides is that if they have a cool theme, if they have a cool, like, if they have cool imagery and cool vibes and things like that, if they have kind of a quote-unquote story behind them, it makes it better, but it's not necessary. You'll still go into it. So, on a hypothetical level, who could feasibly create a roller coaster that has weird, trippy philosophy embedded in it that, of course, because of the speed of the ride, would need to be something that's taken in more subliminally? And you could do it and mess with people's brains. They wouldn't really be down, like they wouldn't be against it, because as long as they're having fun, who cares what the messaging is, right?
Yeah.
To an extent. Obviously, if you're just rushing through a tunnel of Nazi imagery, people might take some offense to that.
Yeah.
But
people might find that a little weird. Yeah.
You can get away with a lot of odd storytelling because it's not the main focus. Right. Obviously, that's not going to be what happens, because roller coasters cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to build and make. and then the decoration of it and whatnot when you do theme it. So you're not going to get like subliminal messaging of why absurdism philosophy is a good idea at Universal Studios, because that would be a lot of money wasted on what why even do that?
Yeah, right. So just to kind of clarify, what we're talking about is that since a roller coaster has this element that you're writing it for, other than the narrative, it's in this position where it can kind of do with that narrative what it wants. It's not really beholden to this idea that it has to follow some kind of like really compelling story structure, because that's not what's ultimately holding your interest. And I guess we haven't really said yet what we're what I guess that you are going to compare that to is video games, right?
Yes, because essentially, while video games, especially in the modern context, are super expensive to make, video games are
not if you make a shit one. But
well, there's that. Well, and there's also obviously there's the rise of things like Steam and Epic and different kind of, even like some of the third-party stuff on the PlayStation Store and the Nintendo Store and such.
Yeah.
There are cheaper ways to make games. Even low budget doesn't have to mean shit. It often does, but it does not have to. But so what the point of the analogy I'm making here is that, and this is the topic at hand, is that with a medium like video games, ultimately the goal is to give the player I'm going to put this in quotations, quote unquote, fun experience, because I'm going to bring up some games a little later that I would argue don't inherently give you a fun experience, but a satisfying experience. But storytelling is not the focus.
Yeah.
And so our topic is kind of, well, sort of, there's sort of a multi-part to this.
Yeah.
But our topic at hand is the idea that video games may be the perfect medium for non-traditional storytelling.
Yeah.
Because you can get away with more. You can get away with more in the video game world because that's not the reason people are there.
Yeah, the kind of initial reaction that I had when this whole line of discussion was brought up, because I hadn't really ever thought about it before yesterday when you mentioned it. My initial reaction was kind of, well, like, why would video games be any different in terms of storytelling? Like why would a wacky story fit better in a game? And upon thinking about it a little bit, sort of like what I said with the roller coaster, games are in this very unique position where they have other things to hold your interest. The story is not is like kind of secondary to the experience. Whether it's like having fun or evoking some kind of other emotional response, there's other things that are kind of tying you to it. And it's before we really get into the whole idea of non-traditional narratives, I just want to say that I was thinking about it, and I think this is both a gift and a curse for video games. That because I think it to some extent excuses a lot of really, really bad storytelling. There are many games out there that attempt to tell these stories in the worst ways possible, which, if they were in a movie, for example, they would be crucified and would never really see the light of day. But because it's in a video game, in an interactive medium, suddenly people think it's like groundbreaking or or whatever. I'm talking about Life is Strange.
Yes. So, fun fact, and I'll go back to this Facebook thread more. I asked a question yesterday on my Facebook page.
I saw your friends had some very basic answers.
Some were good. I was really just looking for. I mean, I'm okay with basic answers because I was really trying to get a more. I wasn't trying to get anything very deep. I was trying to get a more layman answer.
Yeah.
But, Life is Strange came up a few times, and yeah, Life is Strange is fucking garbage.
Oh, it's terrible.
Hot garbage.
Yeah, no, it's awful.
But it does. So here's the thing. I think the reason it gets heralded is because essentially the arguments I'm going... Well, not arguments. Arguments isn't a good word. But a lot of the things I want to talk about with this is a little utopian in that this is where I see where games could go,
sure,
not necessarily where they are now.
Yeah, well, I don't think what we're gonna get at, what we're eventually gonna get at. I don't think that exists yet. Like I don't think anyone's trying to subtly manipulate us into doing magic. Just
well, I'm not even. It's not even. Yeah, that's jumping the gun a bit, but it's not even about like subtle manipulation. I know I mentioned that in the roller coaster thing, but I actually am not a big fan of the like. Even though I mentioned that in the roller coaster, I really only mentioned it being subliminal because in the roller coaster analogy, it would have to be that because the roller coaster is like a 1-minute experience.
Right. Yeah,
games
games have
hours.
your attention for a much longer amount of time. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I'm not really necessarily talking about the need to subliminally manipulate the audience so much as how you can get away with going a little crazier because you have something that will distract the audience more. It's the reason why Life is Strange, I think, it's more credit than it deserves, and I agree with you. If Life is Strange was a book or a show or a movie, it would be basically a medium that is taken seriously.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the issues,
yeah,
is that gaming as a medium is still not really taken something that could be serious.
Yeah. It's not seen as an art form yet. Yeah.
Yeah. But Life is Strange gets away with it because it does seem to be pontificating about something.
It's trying to.
Yeah. Is it successful? No.
Well, it does. I mean, I don't want this to become just a review of Life is Strange, but
I haven't played it. I've just watched Adam from Your Movie Sucks play.
I have played it.
It looks really stupid.
I have played it. It's really bad. But it does a lot of waffling. It just does a lot of like, so the issue with it is that any kind of like message or moral that it tries to portray is so cartoony that it's like not believable. The second game is really funny because it tries to deal with themes of racism and all this
police
stuff.
Brutality,
Police brutality, but the racism in it is so comical and so cartoonish that it's impossible to take it seriously as anything trying to send any kind of message.
What are you, Spanish on the street? Get on the ground! It's pretty. It's pretty. Although, to be fair, I think that's also how movies and books generally deal with race issues as well.
Yeah, but I think people are usually pretty good about calling that out with movies and books and such.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe some get away with it.
Video game has a theme. Oh my god, so deep.
Yeah, and I think that's really the issue, is the idea of video games as, like, creative conduits is, like, a new idea, relatively. It doesn't have the history that these other mediums have as storytelling devices. Anyway, all of that is just to say, video games have a unique opportunity to use this kind of narrative freedom that they have to do some really interesting things. And there were a couple of games that I was thinking of that I wanted to kind of bring up. I don't know if you're familiar with the Talos Principle.
It's from the same people who did the Stanley Parable, right?
I don't know. It might be.
I want to say that's true, but I might be wrong.
It's like a puzzle game. It's like
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, but what I find really, really cool about it is that it uses this. So like on the surface, it's just a puzzle game where it has certain mechanics, and you use those mechanics to solve certain puzzles. Like that's literally what it is. But it uses that kind of packaging to deliver what I wouldn't even call a story. More so just like a series of philosophical musings. It uses this setting and uses puzzles to kind of break up these segments where you're asked to question things like your identity, humanity. What does it mean? What is, like, do we have a soul? What is God? All of these things, right? And it strikes me that that games have this really unique opportunity to put its audience in this situation where they can present you with a problem without really putting your own bias into it. Because the thing about movies, right, is that your own voice is always going to be in it. Any message that you try to convey is going to be from your perspective. But I think games really allow you to let players explore it for themselves. All you have to do is give them something fun to do and then pose the question. And you can kind of let them work through it on their own. I mean, usually that ends up with its own bias in its own way, but I think it's easier to overlook bias in games for the same reason, though, that it's you, the player, doing things, so you can kind of see everything as your own opinion, even if it's not.
To me, the super interesting thing that you would do with that would be to create a narrative to where it's literally tracking what you've done and, like, messing with your perspective by how previous gameplays and previous decisions have affected... How am I trying to say this? Like, previous decisions and previous playthroughs affect the current playthrough.
Yeah.
Which I think that a game that has attempted that to a certain extent and has some interesting things to say about that is actually Undertale.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of when you said that.
Because if you do the apocalypse, the Armageddon run where you just kill everything,
genocide,
and you're an absolute sociopath first, and then you come back, start over, and do the pacifist run. Spoilers for Undertale.
Yeah, spoilers for like a 10-year-old game at this point.
Yeah, but just in case,
I think it's past the statute of limitations on spoilers.
I'll say it so everybody knows. But in Undertale, when you do the pacifist run, you get this happy ending. If you've done the Armageddon, the apocalypse run through first, the character wakes up and, like, I can't remember exactly what happens. It's something like they have like an evil look in their eye suddenly, or like you just end on a frame of like you with a knife or something. It's like it's reminding you, like, right, it's cool that you did the nice ending, but that wasn't your original intention, was it?
Yeah.
It almost, like, challenges you as a gamer and challenges your worldview.
Yeah.
Like...
Sorry, go ahead.
A certain extent... I mean, that's it. It's just, to a certain extent, I realize that it's a few seconds of a few frames to, like, make that point. I respect that it does it.
Yeah. I think that brings up something kind of interesting, too, though, about kind of something that games are in a unique position to do as well. Like, even if they do have a more traditional narrative, which, I mean, maybe this is an example of a non-traditional narrative, but games really are allowed to explore this concept of consequence, that your actions have real consequences, which is something that, movies or books or more traditional forms of entertainment would probably struggle to do if they tackled, because there's no sense of agency in a movie, right?
Right. You just kind of have to decide, like, what is this movie or book about?
Yeah, but games,
you tell that story.
Games are in this position where they can where they give control over to you as the storyteller. And so they are in a position where they can explore this idea that your actions have consequences, and I think that's part of what Undertale was sort of trying to accomplish there. That no, just because you've created a new save doesn't mean that the previous one was meaningless. Doesn't mean that that your actions prior to this had no meaning. They have a lasting effect.
Yeah.
Which is unique and interesting, and I think it's why we have this whole genre of like select things games, select options. Your heavy rains and your Detroit Become Humans and all of that.
Right, all of which, I mean, to certain degrees of success, are trying to make points about perspective and identity and things like that. I also want to bring up, another thing about Undertale specifically, and again, just like didn't want to turn this into a Life is Strange review. I also don't want this to just be like why I think Undertale is a good game.
I love Toby Fox. Wow.
So
I will say, I think Undertale is an interesting piece of media. I don't know if I'd say I like it as a game.
I think it's one of those to where like it definitely like some games the story is bad but the game is good.
Yeah.
Undertale is like the story is good, the game is bad but simple.
Right. Well, that's what makes it interesting to me, is that I think that Toby Fox consciously made these weird decisions where he intentionally undermines his the kind of gameplay elements of it in favor of a joke or some kind of like story theme or something. And it makes the game less fun if you approach it as a game, but it does let you kind of enjoy it as a kind of as like interactive media instead, which is fine. It's a design decision, but.
Well, there is a question though about like, and this is going to be where I feel like as games are already a very mainstream thing.
Yeah,
we've moved away from the era where games are for nerds and stuff like that. Like everybody games,
right. Children
game, adults game. Your very old grandparents play Candy Crush. Like it's super normalized. The next step is obviously going to be being taken seriously.
Yeah.
As a media form. And right now it is not, which is why in a game is challenging in some way, shape, or form. I don't just mean challenging as in hard, challenging as far as like it's trying to do things from a narrative standpoint that are in the face of what a mainstream audience would accept.
Yeah.
It's not taken seriously. It's considered pretentious. How dare you try to be smart within a game? Literally, the word pretentious means applying importance to something where that importance doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. So that's why games that try to be quote-unquote smarter are seen as pretentious, because how dare you try to make games important, so to speak. I do love the idea. I do love the idea of like another thing that I think I like about Undertale is that when you get the good ending, the really good ending, the pacifist run, you didn't kill anything, you were a good boy the whole time.
Yeah.
If you try to start over, Flower warns you will delete everything you've done. All progress you've made. It treats the characters like they're real.
Mm-hmm.
Like these little pixelated things exist, and it kind of treats you as you're sort of the god in charge. And this is like a game's prayer to you to be like, you've put this at a point where everyone's happy. You really want to fuck that up.
Yeah.
I like that it challenges you. I like that it's that in your face.
Yeah, well, I think that's what games that are like serious stories do. I think that they challenge you in some sense, and I think that's what Life is Strange tried to do. It tried to present you with challenging decisions, but none of its characters were likable enough for you to care.
Right, and very, very unrealistic.
Yeah, and just super cartoony.
For a game that tried to predict, like being cartoony is fine.
Yeah. If
the whole thing is cartoony, but Life is Strange is trying to pretend that this is how teenagers act.
Right, but it's hard to make date rape cartoony. Or you shouldn't, I guess is the thing.
Well, yeah, it's well, and to me that's also just the failings of the idea. Like as I think games have to attack certain heavy subject matter though, and fail miserably, so that we have precedent,
right,
for a game challenging or a game presenting hard subject matter that people are like, but it's a video game.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, there was that game that caused Gamergate a few years ago. What was it called? Depression Quest or Depression Story?
Yeah, right. By what's her name? The girl that everybody hates in the gaming industry.
Well, it wasn't made by Anita Sarkeesian, but she defended it.
No, not her. Zoe Quinn.
Yeah. Which I'm not trying to get into the Gamergate controversy.
I don't really care. It doesn't.
Yeah, it was stupid. It was stupid. Actually, it's about ethics in gaming journalism.
Yeah, I just don't.
Why did saying that make me feel old?
I'm just not invested in that discussion at all.
It was dumb.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons there was backlash about that game is that this lady. I'm not trying to say I haven't even played it. I'm aware of it, and I'm aware of what it was trying to do.
Yeah.
It might be a shit game. I don't know. But I think some of the backlash to it was that someone was trying to make a game wasn't necessarily supposed to be fun.
Right.
And that was supposed to be trying to make statements about like what depression is and what dealing with that is. And I think that people were like, again, they probably thought that was pretentious. But in order for us to evolve to a point where video gaming is an interesting medium, actually does what some movies have started doing. I'm not talking about the Marvel movies where it's the same,
yeah.
Bleached, whitewashed, fucking safe as safe can be kind of storytelling. But I'm talking like we recognize that when a movie is challenging, it's considered higher art.
Yeah.
Recognize that when a book or a short story or a poem or a song or all these other mediums of art, when they're challenging, we recognize them as higher art. I don't think we've gotten to that point with video games yet, which I think is unfortunate because, as we've been saying, there is a chance for really interactive storytelling that is very non-traditional.
Yeah, well, I think that there's a camp in like within the larger gaming community which is actively kind of preventing people from really taking it seriously as art. There's a very large camp that's like games are supposed to be fun, and if it's not fun, it's not a game. Games are purely meant as a form of entertainment, and I don't agree with that perspective. And I think it's it's really hindering devs from kind of exploring games as not games, but as like interactive media, interactive art. I think there's a market for that because I would be into it. I like art, but because it's not what sells, it's it doesn't get made. That's the thing, is that with movies and with television, there is a market for it, right? Like people like art, artsy films and things like this, things that have a message. But with games, there's not been proven to be any sort of market for it.
I think that's. I don't know if that's an entirely true statement. I think that whenever a game does something challenging and has a thing is that it has a niche market.
Sure.
I'll get into that a little later if we end up talking about this, like the reason, like when we get to my magical thinking section.
Yeah.
I'll get and if we have time to get into the problems with why that may not happen. I can explore that idea further, but I think that the thing is that, okay, so one of my bullet points on here is, I have 2 bullet points that I'm going to merge into one. One is, why is it easier to tell harebrained stories in video games?
Because they're fun.
Then, why Sonic maybe doesn't work on your TV or big screen.
Because he's a monstrosity, and he doesn't really work as a game either, but that's my opinion.
I mean, I don't think that's true. I think the first few Sonic games are perfectly fun, and I think people do enjoy some of the later ones, even if maybe they are broken.
I really like Sonic Heroes, even though it's a shit game. I'll admit it.
And I mean, we could even talk about I said why Sonic maybe doesn't work, because that's probably the most recent.
Well, I mean, there's lots of failed video game or
there's never been a good one.
Game to film adaptations.
Never been a good one.
The only good one, the only kind of good one, would be Castlevania, I would say.
Oh yeah,
but even that's super loose. It's more inspired by than like a.
It's never been a good. There's never been a good video game or video game movie.
Right.
And that includes the closest to a good video game movie is probably the first Silent Hill movie.
Yeah.
And that's not good. It just has some good elements.
Right.
Why don't they work? Because narrative is the only thing to keep your attention. In a game, nobody questions why Mario is running around, eating mushrooms causes him to be bigger, and he also jumps on mushroom-looking things, and turtles, and breaks bricks, and no one and he's a plumber.
Yeah.
No one questions this. It's just like, whatever, it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Sonic, that's not how hedgehogs look.
Yeah.
He's Sonic the Hedgehog, but that is not what a hedgehog looks like.
Even vaguely, yeah. No, you're right.
It doesn't. But do you care?
No,
don't, because
that's not what the game's about.
Yeah, you're enjoying the fact that you're moving faster than it's moving at especially the original ones. You're moving at a speed that previous games just did not have.
Yeah,
it's causing you to get into this like trance, just like whatever is happening. Can just kind of accept it. And we can take this fucking Gex, Enter the Gecko. is about a fast-talking, witty gecko jumping into various TV show and movie worlds.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, is that the way that movies are kind of developed, and the way that games are developed, they're kind of developed the other way around, or I guess not the other way around, but just completely differently. Where movies you write a script out, and then you like film shots around it, right? But with games, you have an idea for like a core game mechanic. And you build the story around that.
Right. might have a thematic element like in mind. You might have like what the main character should look like and how to build the world around him with that in mind. But yeah, it really does come down to like, what is the game first?
Right. Because if you don't have a really compelling core game mechanic, then you don't have a game. You just have a story. Which, I mean, there have been plenty of people who have tried to approach games from the other way around, write a story first and kind of worry about the game later, and it never turns out well. It's usually kind of a failure. But yeah, I mean, it just doesn't lend itself to that, to working around a story.
Yeah, well, because it's either the story is a failure because game people made it, or the game is a failure because story people made it. But as the art form is evolving, starting to figure out that gameplay can be the story.
Yeah.
For example, like, okay, so we would argue that an element of storytelling is tone, right? Like how the story makes you feel. And something that I think is a great example of this in early gaming is, why did Resident Evil do these garbage tank controls? Because it's scarier.
Yeah, it builds tension. Yeah.
It takes the power away from you.
Right.
It forces you to move very slowly in this world where not everything is slow, and a lot of this shit's trying to kill you.
Yeah.
And you need to make like tech break speed kind of decisions with this character who can't do it.
Yeah.
It adds to that element of horror. And with Silent Hill, they don't make sense that the controls are wonky and shooting a gun doesn't feel right, because your characters aren't military people who understand guns. Your characters are random fuckers who've just been put in this scenario.
Yeah.
And so, gaming and the control that you as the player have is a part of that storytelling. So it establishes things like the tone and the characterization in a way that is much more in-depth than what a movie or book could do.
Yeah, there's actually one more thing that I sort of wanted to bring up in this this idea of non-traditional storytelling, which is and then I think at this point we're probably moving away from the original topic now, so we can probably segue into Eric's Magic Corner. But one thing that I did want to bring up was because games are inherently exploratory. They're about exploring the environment that you're put in. Whether that's an explicit game mechanic or not, like in Metroid, or if it's not, like any linear shooter, you have to look around the map, right? You have to look around this kind of environment that you're put in, and I think that also lends itself to a really unique way of storytelling, which is storytelling just through visuals, through just what you can see. Dark Souls is very, very famous for this.
I was going to bring up Dark Souls at some point, yeah.
Yeah, just for being able to kind of convey this really deep, really, like, under-the-surface information about the world that you're in just through how the map's laid out, or through, like, particular objects that you find around. The lore of that game is so expansive and well understood, while almost none of it is explained explicitly, which is a really impressive feat, and is something that I think you only really get in a interactive medium where you can explore a land.
Right.
That's the last thing I had to say about non-traditional storytelling.
Oh, and I'm gonna to segue into that. I just really wish that I agree that I mean, yes, there's visual storytelling in movies and shows too.
Sure.
And like there are certain visual cues that give the audience a hint as to, like, oh, this is foreshadowing.
Uh-huh.
Oh, this is, there's ways in which movies and TV shows have figured this out too. What I do wish is that more video games would treat its dialogue with some respect. I don't just mean it has to be the most perfectly well-written thing ever. Like, so recently I've been replaying Dead Island. Which I'm having a lot of... Yeah.
I forgot about Dead Island.
Yeah, I have and it's fun, and I have a really good time doing it. But little story. I had an issue where Dead Island doesn't allow, like, it's all autosave. It does not allow you to personally save.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really
so weird. It autosaved at a point where the game froze, and every time I reloaded, it froze again. And I was really fucking pissed.
Ooh, boy.
Yeah, 11 hours just gone. So when I restarted, first time, like, that was my first thing through. And so I was exploring all over and checking things out, even if it wasn't matter, and I was listening and reading all the dialogue, and I was very careful with it. Second time I played through, I started skipping it because I knew what had happened.
Sure.
And what I realized was that you don't need the dialogue to do anything.
No.
You can skip all the dialogue.
It's all flavor, yeah.
Skip all the cutscenes. They're not really serving a purpose.
Yeah.
Because you just need to follow the marker on the map, go to the map, and it'll tell you what you need to do. No big deal. I hate that because you said that, you mentioned that a lot of games allow you to explore the world, which tells, like Dark Souls does, where you learn things through seeing how things are.
Yeah.
Just the imagery and how what the enemies look like in a new place tells you about what this place was. And, whether it's a dark cave or a decrepit castle, that tells you things about, like, what was going on here. And what, like, bosses you find there and what they're like. How they work. Tells you things about, like, what was going on here. I wish that games explored the dialogue like that. Where, like, you actually... there are games that do this. Actually need to pay attention to what's being said because it's a part of how you're going to effectively play the game. But most games just treat dialogue and story as side note.
Yeah, it's a spice.
Yeah. If it's cool, great, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
The player doesn't really need to invest too much into it, which kind of brings me to Eric's Magical Corner.
Yes.
But I am going to refill my beer real fast.
Yeah, I'm
okay?
gonna pour myself another rum and Coke too. So.
Okay. Oh, BRB.
Yep. Today's podcast brought to you by Bacardi Coconut Rum, as well as Coca-Cola Vanilla Coke. Sorry, Orange Vanilla Coke. Need to get your drink on at 12 p.m.? Bacardi's Coconut Rum with Coca-Cola Orange Vanilla Coke. Looking for that special way to tell it to tear your family apart?
So Eric's Magical Thinking Corner.
Eric's Magical Corner.
By the way,
jingle.
This is not an endorsement or magical thought. I am not saying you should practice chaos magic or left-hand path magic or right-hand path magic.
Do you practice any of those?
I mean, you could argue I practice chaos magic in the sense that I do hold somewhat of the idea that basically if anyone's ever said to you, if you put it out into the universe will give it back to you. That's essentially like the simplest definition of chaos magic. I don't practice it because I have not done the full reading to get to a point where I understand it enough to full on try to practice it.
I understand.
I've listened to some podcasts about it and read a few things about it, and I think the concept is.
I suppose that I should kind of preface this part of the discussion with the fact that like I'm not familiar with Magic at all, or like any of the shit that you're probably going to talk about.
When I say magic, and all, what I'm really talking about is occultic and esoteric knowledge.
Yeah, that's just not my bag. You know,
Yeah.
I'll put it out there for the people that like I'm like trained like pretty strictly as a scientist. My education background is in science, and like the only real exposure I got to like more abstract modes of thinking was you know, a few philosophy classes that I took, as well as some like independent reading that I've done on philosophy. But all of that was like pretty Western, like logic based stuff. Not wasn't any like
some of
crazy
philosophical, yeah,
bullshit.
but some of philosophical thought actually ties into occultic thought a lot too.
I'm sure that it does.
So-
I'm just not like familiar with that connection.
100%. Before I say anything too crazy, because I just put PBR and Keystone Light into the same cup.
You monster.
So before they taste the same, I just discovered, but whatever. Before I get too far into that, let me disclaimer: I'm not necessarily advocating for it. I'm just saying that as a medium, I feel like video games could be very interesting to explore some of this stuff with very specific reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling that you're gonna say something similar to how I feel about the Talos Principle, where I'm like, this is cool because it uses a game as a method of kind of getting people to think about these like more abstract philosophical concepts.
Oh, let's first talk
go
about. But let's first talk about how occultic, esoteric, and if anyone is unfamiliar with those terms, because I think they're terms that get thrown around, but people don't really know what they mean.
I probably don't know what they mean, so please explain.
Well, the occult just refers to like or underground kind of magical thought and things like that, or like it's in the realm of the supernatural and things like that. And esoteric simply means difficult to ascertain knowledge. Like, it's knowledge that's difficult to get at, whether because the sources are hidden or whether because the knowledge is just so symbolic that it's difficult to understand.
Okay.
Do you
that's
have, the thing.
Like an example that I would understand?
Of, like, esoteric thought?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, chaos magic and just any kind of magical thought is esoteric in nature. A lot of early biblical principles are kind of esoteric in nature that, like... okay, this is a good place to start. You're not... If you are truly a Christian and you truly believe in the principles of the Bible, you're not supposed to just read the Bible once and be like, got it.
Yeah.
Good. Right? You're supposed to take sections of it and really study it. Like, you're supposed to really sit down and, like, I'm going to say meditate, pray, whatever.
Oh yeah,
You're supposed to, like, meditate on it.
Right. It's a living text that reveals itself to you further the more you study it. Yeah.
Right. That's essentially what esoteric knowledge is. You're not supposed to You're not supposed to be able to read the Bible once and just understand what it is.
Well,
and obviously, the Bible serves multiple purposes. Some of it is just like is ye old ancestry.com. But like, and some of it is fairly straightforward. Like, if you were an Israeli Jew in the middle of post-Pharaoh freed from being a slave times, you're supposed to poop outside the camp.
Right.
Like that's straightforward.
A lot of it's
so
fairly
then we get to like we get like to psalms, which are just songs and poetry. Mm-hmm. And you're supposed to like, and then like we could also say the parables that Jesus tells and things like that. Mm-hmm. These are kind of esoteric in the sense that you're not supposed to read them once and get it.
Right.
It's supposed to be something that is challenging.
Okay.
That is a struggle to understand, that requires you to really meditate on it and challenge yourself and your preconceived notions as to what it means and what it's supposed to be about and how to have it affect your life.
Okay, yeah, I think I get what you're getting at.
Yeah.
I won't dwell on this any more after this, but I just kind of want to make sure that I'm like understanding the kind of foundation of the conversation here. When you kind of gave a definition for what esoteric was, or what esoteric knowledge was, my immediate reaction was, like metaphysical knowledge.
It's metaphysical is a good way to look at it.
Because so if I'm understanding this right, because a lot of metaphysics, is kind of inherently unknowable because it deals with like the realm outside of perception and that kind of thing. Like that would be an example of esoteric knowledge because it's like beyond like human perceptual capabilities.
My understanding of how esoteric is used. Now, I will admit that I do think there is a component of esoteric as well, and this is also, when we get into like occultic views and we get into like magical thinking and stuff like that, there's also different schools in which, I just finished a podcast series on Madame Blavatsky.
Don't advertise other people's podcasts.
Sorry, I didn't say the name. I just said I was listening to a podcast. Last podcast on the left.
Stop. You're gonna drive all of my viewers away.
Well, they didn't talk about video games. They just talked.
Okay.
So Madame Blavatsky is basically, she is interesting in that he was this Russian aristocrat who gave up the aristocracy to travel the world and to meet with all these spiritualist kind of leaders all over the world.
Okay.
From the Mormons to Indian yogis to Tibetan monks, like all over the place.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Blavatsky's work did get turned into a lot of Nazi ideology. She sort of invented the term Aryan, which was not great.
That always happens.
Yeah, no, it is. It's an absolute nightmare. But to be fair, like if you actually look at Blavatsky's work, she definitely has some stuff that's questionable.
Uh-huh.
Her viewpoints on women as a woman is weird, but on the same token, she also though like entrusted the future of her philosophy on this, what she called theosophy.
Uh-huh.
She entrusted it to women too, so I don't know. Is Madame Blavatsky problematic? I guess. But also, like, is she not? I guess. I don't know. She has secret spiritual powers? Some people say yes. Did she also scam people? 100% yes. So I don't know. She's interesting.
This is a complicated person.
Exactly. There's no like easy answers here. But
she herself is a very esoteric person.
Yeah, kinda. And she lied a lot about her own like history, so who she is as a person is dependent on the source you read. I don't know. There's nothing more magical thinking than that statement right there. Like, what you choose to believe and meditate on is your reality on who she was. So, I don't know, man.
Well, she's Jesus in my mind, so.
Then she is. Cool. Have fun with that. But,
cool.
Oh, Blavatsky, the only reason I bring her up, well, besides the fact that this is also what led me to kind of want to talk about this, was Blavatsky traveled the world and wrote a couple of books, ISIS Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine, that are very, very hard to understand.
Yeah.
Possibly because they're poorly written. Also possibly because this is how esoteric knowledge works.
Yeah.
So, some people argue that magical thinking should not be available to everyone.
Okay.
It should only be available to the masters, and so they would criticize someone like Blavatsky for trying to make this thought process and these ideas mainstream.
What are they, Catholic?
Others think... I mean, actually, that's another great example of esoteric knowledge. Catholicism is loaded with it.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, like,
that's a good point.
like it's all over the place. So
Yeah.
that's another great way to consider it. And it's not just power dynamic. It is partially, like, some people just want to maintain power.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also dependent on your philosophy on if magic and magical energies, are they finite or infinite? If they're finite, we don't want everyone to have them.
Right.
And if it's infinite, then fuck it, let everybody have it. And it just depends on how you see it.
Well, I assume that it's also a question of, like, that you want people who are going to use it, like, responsibly to have it, right?
Yeah, and hence Madame Blavatsky inspired the Nazis.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's not good.
So not exactly a check on her side. It's
Not great. And again, this is not even me saying I think Madame Blavatsky is real. Like, she talked about Atlanteans and the continent of Lemuria and a bunch of crazy shit that I don't know if is necessarily real.
Is that a continent where, like, anthropomorphic lemurs live?
Oh, kinda. It is named after lemurs.
Oh, cool.
It comes from the theory that the name of it comes from a theory of it was supposed to be this, like, land that was an island that maybe got swallowed by the sea,
Okay.
and maybe at one point there was a land bridge between it and, I don't know, I've heard a lot of theories about where Lemuria is supposed to be. I think it was supposed to be kind of off of, in, like, the Indian Ocean.
Okay.
Because it has something to do also with, like, lemurs are kind of weird animals and are only found in certain places.
Uh-huh.
And so there's, like, a connection there that I don't remember perfectly.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing.
I'll stop derailing with jokes now.
Oh, it's all good. It's this is a weird topic that's very easy to get off topic on.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
So I already kind of said a thing that was going to segue into the idea of games.
Uh-huh.
And that's that, you know, parts of the Bible are straightforward and parts are not.
Sure.
If you read Madame Blavatsky's work, you might sit there and go, wow, this is really deep and challenging. You also might go, wow, this is the most terribly written shit I've ever read.
Uh-huh.
And poorly edited together because it's hard to understand. That's kind of the point of occultism and esoteric knowledge,
Yeah.
is that it's hard to understand. But here's the thing. No matter, however far you want to take this, whether you're approaching this from a religious angle, whether you just believe in meditation, or whether you believe in a bunch of weird, like, spiritualist kind of stuff, I think everyone kind of holds certain beliefs that sort of tie into occultism, even if it's just the idea that if I put my thoughts out into the universe, then the universe will give back to me. Which is, I think, a thing a lot of people believe, if not consciously, subconsciously.
Maybe.
The more good I put out, if you've ever mentioned karma, you believe this.
Sure, yeah.
So, I'm not even sure I believe in karma. Again, not necessarily me advocating for spiritual thought,
I'm
just
not
a
allowed
topic
to.
I find interesting.
I'm not allowed to believe in it because I'm a stoic.
Oh, there you go. But, and even in Stoicism, I feel like there's a certain degree of, like, you're supposed to meditate on things, right? You're not supposed to come to decisions quickly.
Yeah, it's a very meditative philosophy. Yeah.
So, there are so many books written on this bullshit that espouse these ideas of, they're not just books written to explain stuff. They are supposed to be ritualistic. They are supposed to be something that you sit down and you read a section over and over again, almost like a chant, you know, like certain prayers that are in the Bible or that exist in, you know, the Muslim faith, Islam. I don't know why I said the Muslim faith. Islam. No, Buddhism, Hinduism. Like, there's a certain idea that if you chant something over and over again, eventually you just get used to the words and you start to understand phrases better and such. But all of these are just words. They're not inherently interactive. Where games could evolve to is a point where this ritualistic practice of different philosophies, esoteric knowledge, magical thinking, I feel games could very naturally evolve us to a point where the things we're doing for play, us do this. I kind of have 4 ways in which they do that.
Okay.
So, first thing is, I mentioned, I think I mentioned this before we started recording, but I made a Facebook post where I asked people, what video games have created a meditative trance-like state for you, or maybe tripped you out and messed with your brain? I want to start with the first part of that question. A lot of people, and this is an experience I've had too, and I'm sure you've had too, a lot of people talked about the trance-like state that video games put them in. Where you're just, because almost all video games, at a certain point, no matter how complicated the control scheme might be, after a point, you're doing the same thing over and over again, right?
Yeah. Kind of, yeah.
So, to an extent, like, yes, different circumstances require different things, but, like, especially, like, someone mentioned Diablo, and I asked, do you think the gameplay gets, for lack of a better word, repetitive, which helps you get in that zone? And they said, yes, very much so, about as grindy as it gets.
Yeah, well, there's actually, like, there's, like, an actual concept in the, like, theory of game design that I think sort of sums this up, and it's not just to do with, like, literally how you control the game, but most games are designed with some kind of gameplay loop, where you do a thing, and then you do another thing, and then you do another thing, which leads you back to doing the original thing. There's a game will necessarily have this kind of repetitive nature to it.
Isn't that also just learning?
What do you mean?
Full disclosure, we're both teachers.
Yeah, we're both educators.
And so within education, there's this idea that you teach a foundational knowledge of skills. And once someone has mastered that foundational skill, everything else is just sort of doing the same thing, but now do this too.
Kind of. So as an example, there's a game called RimWorld. I don't know if you're familiar with this.
What's it called again?
RimWorld.
Oh.
It's like a sci-fi like base builder survival game, where you like control all these people and they like build your base for you and you kind of tell them what to do. But the gameplay loop in that game looks something like this. You give a bunch of orders to kind of build your base and like build things that you want. So to that end, you assign jobs to them in varying priorities so that they like kind of self-automate and like do the things that you want them to do in the order that you want them to do it. You get all that built. You kind of let it run for a while just so they kind of like build up materials and that kind of thing. You expand the base and you like recruit new people, which means that you now have to redo all of your priorities and assign new jobs, and then you kind of let it run again. And so that's the gameplay loop. Is this kind of like work on the machinery of like what your workers are doing, let it run, expand, work on jobs, let it run, expand, etc., etc. That's a kind of classic gameplay loop. It's the best example I can think of off the top of my head.
Or can Cuphead, learn everything you're supposed to do in the tutorial. Jump, you dash, you shoot, you dodge.
Yeah.
And the rest of the game is that, varying with the patterns getting more difficult. Fucking Guitar Hero. Figure out you do the easiest stuff just to figure out the basics of. I mean, that's also just kind of what learning guitar is. Figure out the basics of this is where your fingers are supposed to go, and this is what the buttons you're supposed to press, and how that different stuff works. Okay, now we're gonna throw a new color at you where you're gonna have to extend your pinky further and like that.
Yeah.
Gameplay works in a loop. Things with a loop put you in a trance-like state.
Right. Yeah.
And so, if the point of like difficult, if you don't like terms like esoteric and occultic, if you don't like to think of it magically, think of it philosophically. The point is to put you in like a trance-like state where you're really heavily thinking about the phrases you're reading, words you're reading. The difference between games and books is that it's very easy to, in a book or even a movie, to zone out.
Yeah.
Because you're not actually really interacting. Case in point, when I was in high school, I had to read Great Expectations. Charles Dickens is the worst author ever. And I literally read a section of it on autopilot and woke up around the time that I realized the old lady caught on fire and didn't realize that happened. Now, that's not a trance. Yeah. That's zoning out.
Right.
Because I wasn't actually focused on the thing.
Right. So my understanding is that a trance requires you to be like cognitively engaged in some sense.
Yes. Now, people lose like because I've not as much as I should, and I would like to make myself better about this. I've played with meditation a little bit. And like guided meditation and stuff. And people think that you're supposed to like empty your brain. No, you're not supposed to empty your brain. You're just supposed to be there. You're supposed to be in the moment. The point that, you know, for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you are in on whatever it is you need to focus on. That's what you're focused on. Games do that to you. Like, how many times have you started playing a game and gone, and realized that in what felt like 20 minutes, 3 hours have passed?
Yeah, like, that's like literally every time I play video games.
I think that's what a lot of people in my thread kind of pointed out.
Yeah.
Is that when they were talking about the trance meditative stance, they'd be like, I just go, and before I know it, I've played 6 hours of the game, and I didn't even realize that much time had passed. That's a trance. That's meditation.
Yeah.
So, if the point of occultic knowledge and esoteric knowledge, and even philosophical ideas and stuff, is to get in that trance-like stage where you're hyper-focused, gaming offers you an opportunity to do that if you can implement it well in the gameplay. So, which kind of leads me into my second thing. Games is interactive.
Sure.
You can't interact with magical thinking and esoteric knowledge passively. You have to be in it.
Right.
Again, reading and watching a movie is not necessarily an interactive experience. It can be. You can feel things. You can put yourself in the shoes of the character and really be thinking about it.
Right, but that's something that you have to kind of force yourself to do. Yeah.
It's inherently kind of a passive experience.
Yeah.
Gaming allows you to fully interact. And I'm going to bring up a game that I have not personally played, but I've watched a few several hour videos about like what the game is about and stuff.
Fake gamer.
So, what? Yeah, I know. I am. I am. There's no lying about that. Where's the lie? There's this game called Pathological. It came out in 2004.
Oh, I don't know what this is.
Okay, so Pathological is this weird Russian game. By the way, everyone... Well, I mean, if we're going to talk about philosophical shit, gotta go Russian, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Russians are great at that, to be honest.
So, Pathological, and by the way, if you're interested in the game, I've actually been told by people who have played it, don't play the original, someone made the sequel, Pathological 2, is just the original game, but updated. That.
Okay.
Here it's much better. Pathological is a game where you essentially end up in a steppe town. Steppe spelled Steppe.
Right.
So,
yeah.
that Mongolian Russian area.
Yeah.
You are in a steppe town. You will play over the course of the game. You will play as 3 different characters, because and all the stories of all the characters are happening simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
If you play as one character, you will interact with the other 2 doing their own thing.
Oh, so it's just like Sonic Heroes.
Exactly like Sonic Heroes. Yes. All goes back to Sonic. So. The essential gist of Pathological is that you are in this steppe town that and I did not choose this on purpose because of what's going on with us, but there is a pandemic. There's a plague.
Oh.
And you are supposed to cure it.
Okay.
Each character approaches things very differently. There is Bachelor, who is not from the town, and approaches everything with a very cold, calculated, I am a doctor kind of approach. There's the Harrispex, who is from that town, and while he is a surgeon and has very specific knowledge about surgery, he also is connected to their mythology and things like that and respects it.
Okay.
And then there is the Changeling, which is hard to go into, but basically she's a little more miraculous.
Cool.
Now, here's the thing about this game. One, the game is not quote-unquote fun to play.
Always a good thing.
It is very much about the world is a hard place that will fuck you over.
Yeah.
And each character has their own limitations. So much so that there are characters that some characters will barely interact with. Playing as another character, they are a huge part of the game. There's also this weird meta-narrative going on. Basically, the game eventually calls you out and says, no, this is a game, right? In fact...
Weird.
Within the story of the game, you find out it's all a game being played by godlike children.
Of course, yeah. Fucking Russians.
Then later, because there's this theater aspect at the end of each day, you go to a theater and it kind of relays the events to you and makes fun of you.
Oh god.
How you played. And at the end of the game, and one of the endings you can get, the theater players go, yes, you are just a player, you are just a toy being played by gods. But those gods are also just a toy, and then they're talking to you, the player, not you, the character.
Oh, weird.
So it is meta-narrative on top of meta-narrative.
Interesting.
Now, I bring this up because, and we kind of mentioned this earlier with Undertale and stuff.
Yeah.
Games offer, part of the point of esoteric and occultic knowledge is supposed to be you meditate on this stuff for a while to change your perspective.
Yeah.
Change how you see things. Games offer an amazing opportunity for meta-narrative. It causes you to interact with it, not just as the character. It's not just power fantasy. It's not just, I am getting into this character. Games offer a great opportunity challenge you, the player.
Yeah. Okay.
So, ultimately, if a game is structured correctly, it's not just getting you into that trance to focus on what's going on. It's also forcing you to really interact with the decisions you've made.
Right.
Now, the next sort of bullet point with this, which kind of ties into the idea of trance, is also games are ritual.
Uh-huh.
If everything exists in a loop, in all games, you essentially know how to play the game within the first level, zone, tutorial, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like Skyrim, so I'm going to bring up Skyrim.
Okay.
By the time Alduin stops fucking up that one town, you know how Skyrim is played.
Helgen.
Now, Helgen, it is Helgen, yes.
I played Skyrim.
Where that one person always had that great that elderflower wine.
What?
What's his name? When you're riding into the town on the cart?
What?
Someone's like, I wonder if... Oh, Juniper. Juniper, not Elder.
Oh, yeah. Rayloff is talking about, like, I wonder if so-and-so still makes the Juniper wine, because I guess he's, like, been to Helgen or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes,
You
I
know
know
what?
what you're talking about.
One Skyrim fact, never find out.
Huh?
One Skyrim fact, never find out.
Yeah. Who knows?
Never actually learned.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe she is. Maybe she's not. Maybe she's dead.
I mean, she's definitely not now, because...
Because of dragons, yeah. By the time you finish the tutorial and Alduin stops fucking up Helgen,
Yeah.
there's nothing left to fuck up.
Right.
Once you start the game proper,
Uh-huh.
that is how you will play the game.
Yeah.
There will be slight variations. There will be slight changes. At that point, it has shown you how to talk to people, how to swing a weapon, how to use your magic, how to sneak, how to you can get a bow, so you know how to shoot a bow. You know everything. You know how the game is played.
Well, this is super off topic, but I feel a need to mention it. That's why I think Skyrim fails as an RPG. Is because your gameplay does not change significantly based on kind of what you choose to go with. And an archer always plays like an archer, regardless of how far you spec into that role. Two-handed sword guy always plays like two-handed sword guy. All of the basic mechanics to you are available to you right off the bat. It's just a matter of what, like, you're just increasing stats.
Okay.
Beyond that, the RPG elements in that game are not interesting enough to hold your attention beyond one playthrough.
I see your point. I see what you're saying. And I don't necessarily disagree. I do enjoy me some Skyrim, and I will probably eventually buy it on the Switch.
So here's the thing.
It's going to be on the PS5. Skyrim will be on the PS5.
Absolutely, of course it will be. But like, here's the thing though: is like I get the itch to play it every once in a while. Every once in a while, I'm like, I want to start a new Skyrim game, and I start it. And I play it for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, I am already bored. Like, I already know everything that's going to happen.
But to be fair, the game tries to do too much. It is also generally torn apart. This is actually one of the issues with a lot of the later Sonic games. Is attempt to think about Sonic Adventures.
Mm-hmm. I frequently do.
Nobody wants to play Big the Cat. Is it different? Yes. Is it fun? It's the most miserable experience possible.
Hold your tongue, heretic. Big the Cat is a perfect boy.
Listen. Fuck Big the Cat. I'm not going to lie about this.
I will defend
100% would do it.
I will defend his honor with my life.
But what I'm saying is that, and I get what you're saying about being too repetitive.
Yeah.
A well-designed game, basically, at least, I guess my opinion on this, well-designed game tells you everything you need to know, and then it's just you're doing the same thing, but they find ways to spice it up.
Yeah. So there's a game that I frequently use as the example for this. The Witness, which is another puzzle game. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I think I am. I don't think I've played it, but I think it's the one where you're like just on a random island and you just have to keep solving. Like, the landscape is the puzzle,
Yeah,
right?
pretty much. So yeah, there's no like. So this is not a good game for this discussion because it has no narrative. Like, there's no real story to The Witness. I mean, there kind of is, but nah, it's not really what it's about. It's
Is it the perfect game for this discussion?
maybe it is. So it's but I always bring it up in discussions about game design because I think it's the perfectly designed game. It has this really simple mechanic, which is you have like a start point and you have some end point that you want to get to, and you just have to figure out how to draw a line between those two things. And that's it. That's the whole mechanic. But as you sort of progress and you explore this island, different parts of the island iterate on that idea in different ways. And so you're never doing anything like really new. It's just figuring out what the rules are, and it's never explicitly stated what the rules are. You just have to figure them out based on the context. It's super cool. I love that game.
Like, you could say that about a lot of old school gaming too. It's like you play Spyro the Dragon.
Yeah, but some of those are bullshit. Is the thing. There's a very fine line between showing and not telling, and just not telling.
What's wrong with Spyro the Dragon?
Well, Spyro's fine because the mechanics of that are mostly self-explanatory, but the Witness is very good about letting you know early on this game is not going to tell you information. You have to kind of figure it out on your own, and they give you puzzles in such a way that it slowly builds. So you're given like more and more complex situations until you're kind of like, okay, I get it, I know what this mechanic is, and then you can solve really complicated puzzles with it. Super well designed. Fucking 10 out of 10 game. Everyone should play it. It's amazing.
Oh,
anyway, rant over about The Witness.
So I would say that from what you're describing, you said there is kind of a story, but not really, right?
I mean, so there's like audio clips that you can like find around the place, but they're like all optional and require some like pretty deep exploration of your surroundings. And none of them like have like a real story thread. They're all just kind of like random disconnected thoughts.
So the way, and there's some design flaws in Pathologic, like. But the way Pathologic is essentially played is a lot like that too, to where like game doesn't feed you how to play, it feeds you how to fail.
Uh-huh.
And it is about suffering through it to get to what is going on.
Uh-huh.
In each playthrough, it's challenging in a new way.
Yeah.
So Pathological kind of teaches you how to fail, not necessarily how to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes back to something I said earlier about Dead Island, is that you can skip through the dialogue and get through it.
Okay.
Pathological is different because if you're not paying attention to the dialogue, you can fail very easily. You'll say the wrong thing, then like the person just doesn't want to talk to you anymore. Then the quest is failed. So, and unless you like reload a save from right before it, that's it. You can't go back. You can just redo dialogue with that. So
cool.
Pathological. So going back to the idea of ritual, is what Pathological teaches you. The game is the combat is super wonky, and it teaches you this early on when one of the first missions. Is this lady you're staying with goes, hey, there's these dudes camped out in my yard, and they're freaking me out. Can you go do something about it? So you do. And because it's a first-person exploratory kind of open-world RPG, you go, this is going to teach me how to fight. You go out there, talk to them. You act aggressive. They fight you. And they kick your ass because the combat is bullshit. What the game is teaching you is fighting is not your option.
Yeah.
Don't try to fight. Sometimes you'll have to. But honestly, it's best if you can solve things peacefully, because we've intentionally made the combat in this game bullshit.
Yeah.
So it's the practice of constantly doing and failing and doing and failing. And we could argue Dark Souls does this too.
Sure.
It's like you kind of like, nobody plays Dark Souls and like is immediately good at it, right? Like everybody goes in and goes, oh fuck, I'm dead. Oh fuck, I'm dead. And you just die over and over again.
There's a learning curve, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, it's about that ritual practice of doing the thing over and over again and being invested and in it.
Yeah, well, I mean that's like thematically what the game's about. It's about the cycle of living and then dying and then living again. The whole game is about cycles like that.
Yeah, and pathological is among other things is largely about like perspective.
Yeah,
and how like the world doesn't operate one way.
Mm-hmm.
The world operates in, the world changes as your reality and your perspective shifts.
Right. So remind me how this connects to ritual, to games as kind of.
Because it's the idea of like when something like pathological is super challenging, it forces you to just do it over and over again.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
The point that not really like you're not learning how to. You kind of have to, like, a lot of learning is about learning to fail.
Sure.
Like a lot of learning is not, oh, here's how you do it right. A lot of learning is being like, I did this wrong. What was that?
That was a can. That was a can of soda.
A lot of learning is about learning how to do things the wrong way.
Yeah.
Then doing it again and again and again until you finally go, oh, that was right.
Yeah.
And then once you get that, it's almost like it's better to teach people how to fail. When it comes to like esoteric and occultic knowledge, in the Christian faith, people will tell you not all your prayers are going to be answered. In more spiritual, magical kind of stuff, they're going to tell you like not everything not every time you put your will forward, you actually get anything back. Sometimes you'll even set up a situation where you fuck yourself over and you're in worse shape.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of about learning how to fail and adjust.
Yeah.
So games can work as ritual, and then that also ties in my last point, that idea of self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of being like, because I failed, how do I go back?
Right. This went wrong. So what do I do to fix it? Yeah. So I'm gonna be honest. I'm less reading this whole line of conversation as less as like how games reveal occult knowledge, and more as just like games as like how games reveal how education should be done.
I mean, I guess that's also true. When I wasn't trying to say how games reveal occult knowledge, rather as how games can be used.
Yeah.
Or like reveal, but ultimately, that is where we're getting.
Yeah, I think the things that you're talking about are like universally applicable though to teach like anything. And not just with games, but in life as well. I mean, I've frequently been I have frequently stated that education should be more about experimentation and failure and responding to that failure than it should be about discouraging failure and making sure that it's done right every single time. Which it seems like is what you're getting at as well. But
yeah, I mean, it's essentially. I mean, I have my bullet points kind of out of order, but it's like interact, meditate, reflect, do again, which is interact, go into a trance about your interaction, self-reflect in your trance, and then ritualistically do it again.
Yeah.
Is not only, you're right, is not just occultic knowledge, but it's also like how philosophy works.
Sure.
It's like keep trying ideas until something makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how have I forgotten this name? I think, therefore I am.
Descartes.
Descartes, that's it, yeah.
Ergo,
and that was his whole...
Ergo cognito sum.
Yes. I mean, that was the whole point, right? Is he sat there and went, I don't know if anything is real.
Yeah.
Well, I have to just keep trying ideas and then critically self-analyze and go,
right.
Does that idea actually work? It doesn't. He just keeps going and going and going until he finally goes, well, there's one truth.
Right, yeah.
I can kind of get at.
Yeah, his whole idea was to systematically doubt everything until he finds something that he can't doubt.
Right, which is sort of the logic of, like, Dark Souls and Pathological, and games that people tend to call games that aren't mainstream applicable because they're too quote unquote hard.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it's this idea of being like you have to constantly break yourself down, before you can get to any full understanding.
Right.
And so games offer this. When we talk about non-traditional storytelling, a movie can tell you, hey, you have to fail a bunch of times before you'll succeed.
Mm-hmm.
A book can tell you, hey, you have to fail a bunch of times before you succeed. It doesn't actually, because you can't fail at reading a book unless you can't read.
Right, but but a game can kind of
make you do that.
Yeah, a game can demonstrate that you have to fail before you can succeed. Yeah.
A game can demonstrate. I mean, a game is a simulation, right?
Mm-hmm.
A game is a thought experiment that you can do.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not saying that this will lead to absolute truth, because obviously there's going to be biases with any game developer. What I'm saying is that as far as, like, if themes and morals and messages are a part of storytelling, gaming allows us to do that in a greater way, where the person actually has to fully interact.
Yeah.
Which I guess brings us to the question, so why don't more games do that? Why isn't that a bigger deal?
Yeah, well, I think it's... So, I think that's... I think that there's a few different reasons for that. I think it's because a lot of games are not designed cerebrally. Like they're not designed to be these like intellectual experiences. But I think the reason for that, which I kind of already said, the reason that games aren't designed as these like intellectual experiences is because there's not a market for it, or there's not a proven market for it.
We tell ourselves there's not a market for it. I don't know if there's not a market for it.
Well, there has not been demonstrated to be a market for it.
Well, I would disagree, because I think you use Dark Souls for a reason. I think Dark Souls actually shows that there is at least a large enough market. Not an all the money market, not a Fortnite.
But I think the thing is that people don't. Well, so first of all, Dark Souls is largely considered like sort of a cult hit. It's big with a certain crowd.
It's niche.
Yeah, but also I think you can attribute a lot of the success to the fact that it's satisfying to play. It's got a good gameplay loop.
That's fine.
Yeah, but I think that most people would say, oh, people, Dark Souls has a following because, the combat is fun, and it's got like really satisfying kind of mechanics and progression and that kind of thing. Most people aren't gonna say people like Dark Souls because it's like an intellectual experience.
That's fine. That's fine, and I agree with that, but I also think that the thing is that when we talk about the educational aspect of it, is that nobody likes something just because it's cheap.
Yeah.
It still has to be enjoyable.
Well,
that's the point of why games end up being a really good medium for this if people would do it. I don't know if... Sorry,
I don't know if an experience has to be enjoyable like in the sense that it has to be fun, for it to be like a well-received experience. Like I think there are plenty of movies out there that are really uncomfortable to watch, that are still highly praised, as like art, you know.
Engagement. Like,
yeah.
Let's replace the word fun for engaging.
Yeah.
It has to engage the audience.
Sure. Yeah, and right. That's what I'm saying, is that there are other ways to engage the audience besides just, fun. You can kind of, I'm trying to think of a good example of this, and I'm having trouble thinking of it, where something's kind of unpleasant, but it's still like an enjoyable kind of like intellectual. Engaging.
Oh, well, intellectual, I don't know, but like I was gonna say, like, people fucking love Old Yeller. It's a miserable experience.
Yeah,
like,
that's probably kind of what I'm getting at. It's something that people watch and highly rate because it makes you feel an emotion, right?
Yeah.
It evokes something, and that's impressive.
I feel like we brought up a few examples throughout that have, like, I'm not going to necessarily say pathological, because it's you want to talk niche. Like, it's niche.
Yeah.
Like, some experiences that definitely have done well have kind of provided that, like, slightly more intellectual experience while also being something people enjoy for various reasons. Mm-hmm. I think Undertale does it. I think Dark Souls does it, because people engage with the gaming of Dark Souls and the challenge, and from that they then go, what is all this weird shit I'm surrounded by? What is this seemingly incoherent story?
Yeah.
They engage with it because the game was enjoyable.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is like I'm trying to think of experiences where it's sort of intellectually engaging without necessarily being fun, and Dark Souls, I think, is fun enough that it doesn't count. But
I guess it's an either or thing. I mean, I know that, like, a lot of, to go back to the Russians like to show their philosophy through storytelling. Don't, like, you have someone like Nietzsche who just wants to rant.
Yeah.
Ever, or, but, like,
the Russians have Tolstoy, yeah.
and Tolstoy and Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
And then even, like, Sartre is a philosopher who wrote a stage play. Like,
well, like, that's like a pretty, using narrative to illustrate philosophy is like a pretty traditional approach.
But as far back
as
fun.
As far back as Plato's dialogues, right?
Sure. But that's the thing, though, is that narrative, ranting at people is one thing.
Yeah.
Narrative is enjoyable.
Right.
Like a story. People like a good story.
It also kind of lets you kind of like put a layer between you and your opinion, so you can deny them if you need to.
Sure, that's fair. You can't, like, do that.
Which is how Hume used it.
You can't do that with Nietzsche. Can't.
Hume absolutely did that. Hume did something hilarious, because I don't know how much I don't really know how much that you know about Hume, but a lot of Hume's ideas were very, like, not in agreement with the church at the time. And so what he did was he published a dialogue where he was like, this is a conversation that a friend told me about that he had with some of his friends. Like, he had like 3 layers of removement from this, like, philosophical idea that he was presenting. It's really funny.
Isn't that what gaming is?
What?
Like think about, like, something like well, I'm gonna go for one of my faves, Legend of Dragoon.
Okay.
The thematic element of Legend of Dragoon is even if God will destroy you for existing,
Yeah.
fuck God and exist.
Uh-huh.
That could be considered a controversial statement.
Sure.
God and what God wants. I'm gonna do what feels good to me. And they say it. It's in the dialogue.
Yeah.
Like one of the characters goes, "Are we really gonna fight God?" And someone else goes, "Even if it is our fate and God wants us dead, we must struggle because it is what we desire to do." Which literally, and especially, and I know this is Japan where the culture is very different, putting that in an American context where philosophy is more Judeo-Christian, is driven by this idea that God is all good and things like that, could be considered a very controversial statement.
Sure.
Because it's a fun JRPG where you get to do stuff and you get to hear things like, Madness Hero! Like, it allows you a certain level of separation, right?
Yeah.
It allows you a certain level of separation while also being like, this is the plot.
Yeah.
Like, and I would say that, like, with a lot of JRPGs, like, the story is very much a part of the drive.
It's the what if we kissed, haha, unless of philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's exactly that. I think the only thing keeping gaming from really evolving to this point that they can actually do really interesting things, because again, I don't think it's that, people don't want to be challenged in their gaming, because if you can make a fun mechanic around challenging people's thoughts, people will play the game.
Yeah.
Well, I think it literally just comes down to money. It is getting games like Pathological to get major releases.
A, money, and B, also money.
that was my note. It's money. It's just money. But it actually isn't, too. I think what we mentioned earlier about the idea of games being pretentious. Because if a game says something, or if you try to philosophically break down what a game is saying, people think you're being pretentious.
Yeah, I think the culture is not like there yet. It's not. We don't have the right kind of mindset of what games are allowed to be yet. Yeah.
It hasn't evolved to the point that because movies were like that too. At one
Sure.
And I'm sure that within storytelling, there was probably a phase where people were like, "Oh, you got to put all these ideas in this shit. Why can't you just tell a story?"
Yeah.
I'm sure that was a thing people said at some point.
Yeah, as though anything is devoid of like the creators' like own biases and views and ideas. But,
it's and of course people only say that shit when they disagree. With what the story is telling, because if the story mentions ideas that they agree with, then of course they're gonna go, "Oh no, I mean it's fun, but it has a point."
Yeah.
Like, everything has a point.
Right.
It's just whether you agree with the point or not is another matter.
I've recently come to believe that all creations are inherently, like, I don't want to say political, but are inherently maybe like philosophical. They're things that people make are inherently infused with their own perspectives and their own kind of beliefs.
Right. Well, I mean, it depends on how you're defining politics, but I mean, there's plenty of evidence to support the idea that everything is political.
Yeah.
Even the attempt to be apolitical is a political statement.
Even this
argues that. Hey, what?
Even this podcast.
Is this podcast apolitical?
No. I'm saying even this podcast is political. But so I think as you know, I'm a fan, and you are as well, of the Paul Simon album Graceland.
Yes.
And I did like in college, I did a bit of a research project on that album, and what I sort of came to find was that there's no such thing as being apolitical. Graceland is some people would call it apolitical. That it's like oh, he just went and made music with black artists. I guess I should explain what Graceland is. It's an album Paul Simon made during apartheid with a bunch of black artists in South Africa.
He flew to South Africa to write and record with them.
Yeah. And the thing that was so striking about that album is that it doesn't deal with apartheid at all. It doesn't reference that struggle. It's purely about the music. But even just the creation of it is inherently political, but also the fact that the album is apolitical is also a political statement. It's saying art. Well, not apolitical, but I think things that are apolitical are not really apolitical. They are anti-political. They're saying art it should be free from politics, which is itself a political statement.
And it's also like you look at that album. It's called Graceland, and the song Graceland is heavily features South African black people play black guitar.
Yeah.
Not guitar, bass.
Yeah, bass.
And it's like, but it's singing about Memphis, Tennessee, which inherently almost has this message of like, even if you're not from this place, everyone can relate to this concept of a land of grace.
Yeah.
A land of, because that's the whole point of that song, right? It's like, talks about all these troubles he's going through. He's traveling to Graceland, where basically all is forgiven.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what your skin color is or anything like that, where you're from, we can all relate to that concept, which is inherently a political idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that no matter, I think, to say that something is apolitical is naive, because
lazy.
Is lazy and also naive, because it implies that there's anything that people universally agree on. There's always going to be disagreement, and I mean, I guess there are things you can disagree on that aren't political, but I don't know. I still find.
I guess it depends on your definition of political.
Yeah, I mean, I think political's a pretty broadly, like, can be pretty broadly interpreted.
Right.
But again, I would suggest that even the idea of something being apolitical is really just a statement that, art shouldn't be political, which is itself a political statement. Or that, that
I can't stand that idea.
Or not that art shouldn't be political, but to say, like, I've made this art and it's not political is a political statement. It's saying I've made this in opposition to politics.
You're challenging people to be able to politicize it almost.
Yeah. Which is what I find fascinating about Graceland, is that he took this situation that's so politically charged and made something that is ostensibly not political, which is the word political is stopped sounding like a word now, but he's taken this thing which is ostensibly not a political creation, but just that statement that it's not political is a radical political statement of, like, art's free and, like, it needs to be free from politicians and that kind of thing. Which I actually I like what Paul Simon has to say about that album, by the way. He has some really interesting thoughts about kind of, like, political restrictions on art and that kind of thing. It's very cool. But
he also it's also interesting that he doesn't explicitly talk about apartheid, but he writes a bunch of songs about togetherness and equality.
Yeah.
With South African musicians who wouldn't normally be heard.
Yeah.
And so he's writing about apartheid without writing about apartheid.
Yeah.
You inherently can't remove the political. I mean, I guess you can if you just want to enjoy bass line and stuff.
Yeah, some really cool horn sections. Yeah.
Yeah, but also you kind of can't because how could someone who is, say, a white supremacist,
yeah,
and would be pro some kind of segregation,
listen
to that album and go, yeah. How could you listen to them and be like, that's a funky bass? It's really interesting that you think that because
yeah, for sure. Best album ever made, by the way.
It's an absolutely delightful album.
it's fucking masterpiece. It's insane.
And I think that's the thing is that that's what we need to evolve from. We're able to say that with to bring it back to the circle.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be able to. Gaming offers. I think that was the point of this conversation overall. Is gaming offers these opportunities to present ideas in a way that is so unique.
Yeah.
We just need to get past the idea that, that's pretentious. We just need to shut the fuck up. No, it's not. It's all art is political. All art is philosophical. All art reveals ideas of its creator.
Well, and not just that, but that all creations are artistic. Including video games.
Yeah.
Anything that someone can create is art. I don't know. I'm very much in the camp that broadly interprets what is allowed to be art. I think anything's allowed to be art, really. So I think we need to get past this idea that there are particular mediums in which art exists, and embrace new mediums that arise, especially because we're in this crazy technological boom, where new mediums are arriving every day. TikTok is art.
It is. Is it good art? That's another matter.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a joke, but I'm not really joking.
Some of it. Oh, it is 100% art.
Yeah.
Is it good art? I think also there's.
It depends,
I feel I do feel like there's also this weird we put the word art on this pedestal. Say something is art inherently means it's good.
Yeah, well, I think
we got to get past that.
I think I think people tend to want to think of art as something that's elite, something that's only available to intellectuals.
That's the question about esotericism, isn't it?
And that kind of thing.
Did everyone have access to this?
Well, I think art is one of the most accessible things out there.
Agreed.
I think that
you and
anybody
me.
can. What?
It's you and me, though. A lot of people don't agree with that statement.
I mean, art is essentially just expression, right? It's just people expressing things, and anybody can express, barring androids, or yeah, yeah, but most anybody is capable of expressing how they feel about something, and so I think in that sense, art is one of the most accessible things out there. If both in the sense that anybody can create something that expresses an emotion, or if something expresses an emotion or a feeling that you connect with. Then you don't have to be an intellectual to understand it. You just connect with that feeling. Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying here. I would say this. I think that one of the reasons why I think people aren't against saying that art, I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
Are you all right there?
Yeah, I got coronavirus. It's okay.
COVID-19. age of the pandemic.
No, I just swallowed my root beer and honey whiskey raw.
Ooh. Combo.
It was all I had left. I went to pour myself a drink and I was like, I've only got root beer. What mixes best with that?
I can see that working. I can see root beer and whiskey working.
I don't mind it.
But I think that another thing we have to like move away from is the idea that like I think people are willing to call video games an art form.
Sure.
I just don't think they're willing to take it seriously.
Yeah, well,
as an art form.
I think we're not. I think we're not at the point where we're willing to sacrifice, kind of the marketability of them for that sake.
Yeah.
I had this discussion with somebody recently about Cyberpunk, because that's an upcoming game, and I fully believe Cyberpunk is not going to meet people's kind of expectations. People want it to be like the greatest RPG ever with like these like super in-depth like systems for how the world works and all this stuff, and I don't think it's going to happen. But what we were talking about was how they're handling like sex and these kind of more raunchy aspects of the setting. And he was like, he was talking about how, they're very much incorporating this idea of sex and like nudity as part of the experience. That it's a core part of kind of what they're trying to do. And I was like, yeah, but they're not gonna do anything really that like groundbreaking, right? Like it's not gonna be any worse than anything you see in any other game. You're gonna see some titties. You're probably not gonna see a pussy.
I was hoping. I was like, can I be Keanu Reeves with a vagina? Because if I'm allowed that, I'm in.
That's the thing, is that when a game dev says we're gonna push the boundaries of like sexual content, what they mean is that they're gonna show you some tits.
Games are still being... It's like we talked about with Life is Strange. Because it seems to be pontificating about something, it is quote-unquote deep.
Yeah.
Because games are treated with kids' gloves because they're not a quote-unquote real art form.
And that's the thing, is that if Cyberpunk decided to show more, it would be less marketable. They wouldn't
be able to afford Keanu Reeves.
they would be limiting their audience more, and like I'm not saying that like to explore like the concepts of like sex and things you have to show everything necessarily, but I can imagine a world in which your message would be portrayed better if you were allowed to show more.
Right. Is Cyberpunk going to explore ideas of consent in interesting fashion? Probably not.
Probably not.
Now, are there movies that are willing to explore consent?
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
I highly recommend, by the way, if you're looking for a weird experience, I kind of recommend this movie and kind of don't.
Always.
I think it's great. I also think a lot of people are just going to think it's super boring because it's literally just watching a lady do her job as a secretary.
Oh, is this, what's it called?
Assistant.
Yeah. I heard about this.
We both watch Red Letter Media.
Yes. I too watch Half in the Bag. Oh, no.
It's a great watch. But it's also super boring. I didn't find it super boring, but if someone were to say I hated that movie, it was super boring, I'd be like, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're going into the movie for.
But we've allowed movies to evolve to a point where we don't mind something like the assistant existing. Games, we're not quite ready to do that. And if we were, we wouldn't have created Gamergate around a movie zone or around a game Zoe Quinn made.
Yeah, definitely.
So
sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I do think I think we're probably at a point where we're good to end, and I kind of do need to start to get going.
100%, no worries.
But yeah, no, this was fun. I enjoyed this discussion. This was very good.
What I'm saying is, create a video game where we can use the dark arts to literally summon Satan.
Yeah, I think that would be cool.
That's my end point.
I think people would be receptive to that. Create a video game where we use the dark arts to summon Sonic the Hedgehog himself.
Satan as Sonic the Hedgehog.
Satan with Sonic the Hedgehog as his like worldly avatar.
I think that's already the case. I think that's what Sonic is. Especially that first cut. Especially the first edit of Sonic.
Absolutely, yeah. What's up,
so,
I'm gonna take your soul real fast.
You worshipping Jesus is way past cool. Except there's so much of that Sonic fan art where Sonic is, like, religious.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, this has been fun.
That's the next podcast episode. Religious Sonic fan art.
Sonic as Jesus figure. Anyway, this was a good talk. I
enjoyed it.
I enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. Nobody else did, probably. This is probably incomprehensible to any third party viewer.
I mean, let's be real. I tried to connect Madame Blavatsky in video games. Like it's a weird call.
This is pretty out there. But overall, this is good. Thank you for taking time to do this with me.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you all, viewers that I don't have yet because I haven't published this anywhere.
Kiss me on the face, you bitches!
Stay tuned for next time where I name this podcast.
It's about Sonic the Hedgehog Christian fan art.
Yeah. Or, like, politics or something. I don't know. It could
Politics of Sonic the Hedgehog Christian fan art.
Could be about literally anything. I know it's been about video games twice in a row, but I don't know. Anyway, thank you. And goodbye. Outro music.
I